Good morning, Vietnam. Good evening, YouTube, all of our loyal followers. I don't know how I fucked that up. Flashbacks. Good evening to everybody joining us. YouTube, what's going on? What's happening, YouTube? In Michael's language, what's cracking, partner? This is the story of I am Manny Lagunas, Michael Bowie, season 3, the story of Emmanuel Pierce joining us here today. Manny, how are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I was prepared for this interview. I
All
had
right,
all
that's
my
enough
stuff
out of
together.
you. That's enough out of you. Thank you. Michael Bowie, before I give you the floor, I just want to say you are looking like somebody's fat toe. What's going on with your hairdo? What's going on there? Yeah, you're muted.
It's a
Anyway,
part of being
That's
prepared,
fine.
Michael.
I've done it. I've done it every week thus far. But at least I know that when someone puts their finger up for the first 2 episodes, that's a cue to start talking. So I'm good with being muted. But I want to thank you for that introduction. It sucked as your joke for a fat toe, but I did love you inside of the movie A Bug's Life. We're gonna jump right into it for the story of with Emmanuel Pierce. Such a lot to take in from the last episode where we were starting to learn out about your middle school years. And so I want to give you the floor, Manny, where we kind of lead off where we left off about kind of your role models and your experiences inside of middle school.
Well, thank you, Milk Dudhead. I'm glad you asked.
You understand that this is kind of our thing. You don't jump in here, Bismarcky. But I want to thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thanks for asking me, Milk Dudhead. Anywho, so my role models in middle school. We kind of started to talk about it in elementary, and we didn't transition to middle school. So one of the people that was one of my role models, I would say, was my principal of my middle school. His name was Mr. Vondre Glass. Now, the thing about Mr. Glass is he was a black belt. He was black,
with
yes.
With Vondre as a name, he was black. Gotcha.
He was black, but he was like a black belt in martial arts and jujitsu and like 3 different things. So like one of the first days in school, he brought these cinder blocks into school and he started breaking them with his hands. I don't know what I don't know what the lesson was about that, but I thought it was cool. And it was nice to see a black man that was in charge and powerful and would take his stand. And that was so helpful. Another one of my role models, and this leads to kind of the puberty subject we were supposed to touch, was one of my mom's boyfriends. His name was Marvin. And the puberty thing was hilarious. So he actually gave me the talk, which was very weird and awkward. And it was in front of my mom, so it made it even more weird and awkward. And the way they did it was they tried to show me how to put a condom on, and they took they took a boiling pot and put a condom on the head. And that was the worst days of my life. And I was in like 6th or 7th grade when it happened. And I was like, oh my God, what are we doing here?
Wait, because I'm kind of confused. You said your mom's boyfriend. So your dad that's in prison, were they never married?
No, never married.
Okay.
My mom had me when she was 18. So no, she was not married.
So because he's in there for life, she was seeing other people. So this was one, or did she have multiple different boyfriends throughout your?
My mom had multiple boyfriends. This is just one of the dudes that I liked.
Were any of them somebody that stood out? I mean, obviously to learn about puberty and putting on a condom, that would probably be the biggest one to stand out in your mind. But was there somebody else from one of her boyfriends that kind of was that good positive role model? And was there one that was a negative role model?
Well, I would say Marvin was a good positive role model because he would try to show me things about being a man, like trying to get me to talk and all that other stuff. And he was pretty nice. A negative one, I would say, was another boyfriend that she had that when I was a kid that pulled the gun on her while I was in the house. So, it's been ebbs and flows.
You were there when that happened?
Oh, I was definitely there, yes.
And so how did that impact you? What age were you?
Right.
maybe 8, 9 years old. Um, how did that impact? It hurt me to see my mother in that position, and I became much more defensive of my mother, especially around her boyfriends. Like before, I would try to be, as a younger kid, I would try to be nice and respectful to all adults. But the rest of her boyfriends, I was just standoffish to. Like, I'm not your friend. We're not friends. We're not cool. Any of that. Like
So
my trust.
So that can be like, and I don't want to spend too much time talking again a little bit because we are talking about the middle school age,
Right, right, right.
middle school time. But so then that almost like that can be translated to that aggression that you had towards a lot of people. Is that right? Or would you say?
I would say that played a factor in it too. I would say that definitely played a role in it.
Right, right. Okay. I wanted to ask you, because we are talking about, your middle school years.
Mhm.
For those of you watching that don't know, make sure you go watch episode 2, the story of Emmanuel Pierce. But Manny mentioned Black Manny, I should say, no pun intended. He mentioned that getting to middle school years, his teenage years, he sort of let go a lot of this anger, right? And we're talking about his role models, and I just want to know how that sort of played into your social life. You're in middle school, big changes coming. We just mentioned a little bit about puberty, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit more. How did that play into your social life in school? I mean, you let go of this anger. You're now starting
Mhm.
to find yourself. How did that play into your social life?
Uh, well, I think it was more of a test to keep my anger under control, right? We kind of briefly touched on the fact that like I wasn't a very popular kid and people picked on me on both sides, right? So I got it when I went to school, and then there was a transition too of at church too. I would get it from that angle too. So like um I would say those years were more of a test for me to control, to see if I to put what I had learned to the test. And I feel like I did a much better job. One of the things my mom will always tell me is people mess with you because you give them a reaction. So they're going to keep trying to do it to get a rise out of you, get a rise out of you. And it took me a long time. I would say probably till midway through seventh, eighth grade to figure that out. Like if somebody's talking about me or saying something about me, if I give them a reaction, they're just going to keep doing it. If I ignore them and not respond and not let it get to me,
Mhm.
I'll have a better outcome. So, uh, yeah, I would say a lot of the big bulk of that was just me trying to um, get through the relentless teasing that I was enduring.
So that middle school stage, you weren't trying to like be social buddy buddy. You were more trying to like control yourself and learn how to.
I would try to make friends, and I had some friends. Don't get me wrong. Like I had some friends at church, some friends at school. Um, you know, uh, that I developed. Friends that I had come over and stuff like that. Um, but that just like whatever friendship happened, they just happened naturally. Like I wasn't forcing it, and I was getting to that age where I was getting into girls, and so I would be interested. And that's another thing that's something that I had to learn how to deal with later on. But the rejection piece of dealing with girls too, I struggle with that too. Because when you get to that, that's sixth, seventh, eighth range, that's when boys start liking girls, and so that's when I had that going on, but I also had uh, other things. But my male friendships were just like they just happened on their own. They were natural, just based on things that I was doing.
Now, I know that you talk about, dealing with this stuff, and whether it be from things your mom told you, or taking your mind off of things with sports or hanging out with friends. At that young age, sometimes it's difficult to deal with a lot of those different things. And I know that you bring up your pastor and going to church, but I'm just curious how religion played a part inside of dealing with this. Were you a religious person? Did you use faith and belief in God, or whatever, whoever you believe in, as a way to get through this? Not just all the different challenges, but things with your dad being in prison, and or the all the other things that you dealt with,
Mhm.
inside of a single parent home.
Faith did and still does play a big part in my life. So yeah, I would say another way that I dealt that was just throwing myself into things in church, right? And that helps you get into that social atmosphere to hopefully people will stop messing with you when you put yourself in things. So like I want to say sixth or seventh grade, I was like, okay, I'll join the youth choir. So I did that. That didn't stop the teasing, but then I was like, okay, I'll join the band then. So I did that. Or I'll try out for the church play. And I was in those. I was in some of the church plays. I try to throw myself into activities at the church to help with that. And in addition, try to learn some of the lessons that can teach you how to persevere through things. And one of the things that I would say as a child, I did not understand, but as an adult, I get when you're doing things right and you're following the right path, and the Bible says this too, when you're doing things right and you're following the right path, you'll be persecuted, right? People aren't always going to like you for standing on the truth and doing the right thing. I mean, if you're a Christian, you believe they killed Jesus for standing on the right thing and doing the right thing, right?
Sure.
If we're going to be Christ-like, that's what's going to happen. So, that wasn't a lesson. That was a lesson that was being given to me as a child by multiple people. It's just hard as a kid to understand in that social setting where you want to be liked and accepted by all of your peers. That lesson.
But I don't want to get too spiritual here. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything. But so then, would you consider almost like, again, like being Christ-like, or just the story of Jesus Christ? Would you consider that to be part of the role models you had growing up?
Yes, in a way. Like, so I wanted to be closer to Jesus. I wanted to be like Jesus, right? And so I felt like, and again, this is one of those things as a young person you don't understand, right? Because we put our faith in a lot of people and our
Mhm.
trust in a lot of people, and we think that people will be the solution to our problems. But then they do stuff that you see and you notice that makes you turn your head at them like, oh, I never thought you would do that. So I would look up to certain people in the church, right?
Mhm.
And they would say and do things either to me or to other people. And I would see them like, okay, that's kind of weird for us to be trying to follow God. So it's kind of some of those things too, that I would say I was looking at. I was looking at men instead of
Mhm.
God, which I understand the difference now. But as a child, again, in a child's mindset, those things don't click to you.
I'm looking at my childhood, and I'm looking at hearing everything about your childhood. And before hitting high school, before we kind of delve into that, I
Mhm.
see everything from birth up until the end of junior high to be that true childhood. High school year, yeah, you can consider that your childhood, but it's not your true childhood. So to me, when you look at your childhood, are there any regrets that you have from the experiences that you went through? Would you have done anything differently? And if so, what? Is there something that you wish would have happened or did not happen?
I would say there's a few things, right? So I stopped playing sports for a while. There was a gap where I just quit, not just for like me, but for monetary reasons for my mother. And like, I always blame my dad for that, right? Like, I that was a personal thing with him, right? So when he called sometimes and my mom would say, your dad wants to talk to you, I don't want to talk, you know, like I would take some of that out on him, just because like you're not there and you could have stopped this or you could have helped this situation. And so I would say that I would say I regret not giving him a chance in those moments as a child. I regret letting people rile me up and get me out of my character and trying to let people chasing other people's acceptance and trying to let them make me something that I wasn't. I regret that. But as far as anything else goes, Probably not. It's a part of learning. I wouldn't be me if I didn't go through all that, right? I wouldn't be me. So, all those experiences shape us, and so I don't regret any of it. Is all of it a blessing? No, but it's all makes me who I am. But those are two things that I point out that if I could go back and change, I would go back and change.
Okay. Now, we mentioned a little bit briefly, one of the, I guess, the most notable moments, I guess, part of your, your growing up process and puberty, and the whole condom situation. But there's a lot more to becoming a man, and learning
Right.
how to be a man. What else could you elaborate on that? I mean, how did you learn? I mean, just to shave, what's going on with your body at that age, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera.
So shaving, my mom didn't even teach me that. That's just something that I think one of her boyfriends had left his shaving stuff, and I just tried it on my own. And then eventually my dad was like, well, we have very sensitive skin, so using a razor. And that was something that he taught me, using a razor is not good for your skin. You're going to get all these bumps on your skin. You need to get you some clippers or something like that. That was one of those things that he taught me. It's like, okay, I shouldn't use razors on my face because it's going to irritate me and break me out. So that was one thing, the shaving thing, and then the growing. A lot of the stuff though I had to figure out my own because my mother wasn't going to talk to me about it, like growing hair in different places, how to manage yourself. The one thing I would say that she stayed on me about is like smelling good, right? Because like normally when boys hit puberty, you don't always start to use deodorant and stuff like that, so you smell bad. So I would say the one thing she stayed on me about was like trying to make sure that I smell good, and I always presented myself well. So I'll say that. But yeah, some of the stuff you did teach me, like how to, not to use a razor or different things like that, or just,
Mhm.
But for the most part, some of the stuff I had to figure out on my own.
Were there times that your dad that's in prison did he ever try and mold you those kinds of ways that some of those boyfriends did that were able to do it in person through the usage of talks on the phone? And if so, what's one of those memorable talks that he kind of helped coach you through, those younger years growing up?
Yeah, I mean, he tried to give me the talk to another, other things that he would talk to me about would be like doing well in school and putting my best foot forward. Really, what he would do when he got on the phone is just motivate me. He will always tell me things like, "Oh, you're the best. You're the smartest. You can do anything you want to do that you put your mind to," or tell me books I should read. He sent me Rich Dad Poor Dad at a very young age. Send me that. Send me a bunch of books to read, real estate books and all sorts of stuff. He sent me a radio with music and stuff like that. So he would try to have other people send me stuff or send it to me himself if he could.
Now this is kind of a question that kind of backtracks, but I know that from what we've learned about your dad, we've learned about where he's at now, but it just sparked in my mind, what was he doing before he went to prison? Like, what was his job? Was he in your life at all? Like, do you remember any of those moments? If so, like, tell me about him before.
He's been in prison my whole life.
You don't know what he did for work before then?
I do, but that is a part of the story that comes later.
Okay.
I did not figure out most of this stuff until I saw him again when I was 24.
And that didn't frustrate you as a kid? I mean, just to know more about the person that you
I didn't
thought
think
did.
about it. I didn't think about it, to be honest with you, because like I just knew what the situation was. Like, from as far back as I could remember, he was in prison. Like that was it. Like that was the situation. I didn't think of, oh, what was he before, or all of that. I just knew the situation and the boundaries that were keeping us from being together. And I feel like that's the most important thing to a child is where their father is now not where they were before.
Well, that's kind of the reason why I asked the question, because kids are made fun of if they don't have a father. Oh, well, you don't have a dad, or you don't have a mom. They're made fun
Right.
of all kinds of things. So, did kids catch on to the fact that your dad was in the not the hospital, but inside a prison, and did they make fun of or give you flack about it, and how did you deal with that, if so?
Mm, I wasn't teased for that. Mostly it was just being chubby and being smart. Um, or people just not liking me for whatever reason. I can't give you the other reasons, but mostly it was that. It didn't have any people didn't know about my dad. I mean,
Did you
they
feel uncomfortable to talk about it, or it just never came up in
it just
conversation?
never came up. I mean, that's not something that I just talked to other people about. A few close friends, I'll say one of my childhood friends, his name is JD. We talked about that. I talked about it with my close friends knew. Martell knew, one of my close childhood friends when I was at that age in middle school, JD, he knew. Um, there are a few people who knew that I talked to about it. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk about it, it just never came up.
Right. Did you have any Mexican friends?
Did I have any Mexican friends? No. I lived next door. The where I lived next door to Middle Eastern people. So I had some Middle Eastern friends from different parts of the Middle East, Arab friends that lived right next door to me that I would hang out with. But Mexican, no, there really weren't that many Mexican people on my side of town. I will say I had a few Mexican friends at church, and I met through church, but not in school or anything like that.
So, wrapping up the junior high before moving into high school, is there any other stories or experiences, things that you kind of want to share? Because I just want to know, like, when we jump into high school, which we'll end on that note, like, where you went to high school is going to be the question,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of opening up with what was the decision to go to wherever you went, kind of thing. But before we get into that as that kind of closing question, is there anything else that you kind of want to add to your experiences within junior high, with inside of your younger years, with dealing with your dad being inside of prison, and just having to deal with a lot of the different things that you dealt with inside of a single parent home?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one other thing that I could touch on is, and this is a part of the reason I said I went to two different middle schools. This is a part of the reason that I went to a separate middle school. There was a guy who used to drive me, who was another role model, who used to drive me. I can't remember his name, but he used to come get me in the mornings from our house to go to Ludington Manor Middle School, which is the middle school that I went to the first time. And he would pick me up in the mornings and take me home at night. And I was always his last person that he dropped off. So I spent the most time with him. And he was an older man. And he would always have little sayings here and there about hard work or uh, trying to teach me social skills, I guess, in a way. So, that's just another person that touched and impacted my life that I could think of. But other than that, I mean, we kind of got it down packed, just going from, that part of my life really was just about being teased and kind of going through those challenges and getting over that anger. The typical middle school story.
Okay. So then, if there's nothing else that you can think of, take us into where you went to high school, like your ninth grade year. What was the decision to go there, and were you nervous? Because sometimes for many of kids, when they transition from junior high to high school, that's kind of a big moment. That's almost like going through puberty. So,
Mm-hmm.
what was that kind of experience like that first day at this high school?
So like I said, born and raised in the city of Detroit. In Detroit, you take a test the summer before you go to high school, and they place you in a high school. So there are three high schools that you can get placed in, and if you don't get placed into those high schools, you go to your neighborhood high school. Cass, King, and Renaissance. My mother wanted me to get into Renaissance and go to Renaissance because that's where she went to high school. My dad went to Cass. And then King was just there. So I took the test, and I got into Cass and King. And, I was kind of going back and forth about it. And I was like, you know what? I want to go to Cass because that's where my dad went. Kind of like a legacy thing. So I chose to go to Cass Tech, who was Cass Technical High School in Detroit, my ninth grade year. And was I nervous? Yes, because Cass is a humongous high school. It's over 2,000 kids there. It's 7 floors. And high school, you don't really know what to expect. And it's a long day. It's not like regular high school. You know, the schedule there for your first day is a shock because it's 1 through 8. There are 8 blocks, and you get 1 lunch. So you have 7 classes. It's a college preparatory high school. So, like, even that is, like, the more workload that I'm stepping into out of middle school, you know, because I wasn't working that hard in middle school. The more workload that I'm stepping out into in middle school. Now I'm being thrown into this huge social environment, you know what I'm saying, that I'm not ready for. Just a bunch of things that are happening, you know, happening wise. So it's just like, yeah, I would definitely say I was nervous and scared that first day. I didn't know what to expect at all.
I think that's pretty much the majority of people's experience, where we all just, you know, especially going to a school that's just different, not knowing anybody. I know that that's just common, and I definitely want to jump into what those few 4 years were like within your high school experience. You know, your friends that you made, and even some of your positive and negative role models. So we're definitely going to jump into that on the next episode. I think that we've learned a lot about, you know, you coming up and things about, you know, how you dealt with certain things like puberty and being bullied or made fun of and everything else. So I'm good with where we're at. Is there anything that you kind of want to add, Manny, within closing?
Yeah, first of all, if you could refer to me as Brown Manny, I'd appreciate it. No, nothing else. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have a good stopping spot. If you guys at home, wherever you may be watching from, if you YouTube want to learn more about Emmanuel Pierce's story, if you are feeling his story, man, make sure to tune in next week. Same channel, Bowie Films. Subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment below if it's a story.
I just want to say this real quick, Manny.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I want to thank you and the chocolate raisin for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. You know.
You know, every show is not going to turn into the same concept, and I'm not going to be heckled by Kid and Play here, but that's neither here nor there. You know, it is what it is. Manny, don't get short with me. Black Manny, your head's obese. So that's about all that we have for you guys today on the show. Like we said, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit us up inside of the comments. Let us know what you guys think. If you guys are interested in being a future guest, you have a story to tell, as I think we all do, then please hit us up and we can try and get you on the show for a future season. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of the episode and this season, and we will check everybody out next week.